Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Gigi Kopelak, and my guest today is the artist Wendy Shalen. Wendy is proficient in many different medias. She teaches at the Art Students League, and I'm very happy to have you here today, Wendy.
Thank you for having me, Gigi.
My pleasure.
Really
so there is a show, an exhibition in New York City right now at the Prince Street Gallery of your work. The show is called Family Matters, which is very interesting. I thought it was terrific. In fact, we have one picture that I'd like to show right away because it's very moving. It's of your grandmother.
Right.
Yeah. And was that instrumental?
Well, it was 1980, and
Okay.
She passed away in 1980 at 90, and it was a picture that I did right after she died from memory and from a little bit of photographs, but I really don't even recall the photographs. She was a wonderful woman who really kind of helped me decide in this particular show what to do, because she was a knitter and a crocheter. The sweater she's wearing, she crocheted. She had arthritis. The last time I saw her, she was in a difficult state in the nursing home, and she was very confused and either afraid of dying or just confused about life and what was going on. But I think she kind of knew what was going on.
Right.
So
you did this without, just from your memory?
I did it from memory because she was so frail. And when I left the nursing home, I went into the car and I wrote on a sketchbook really quickly, did a drawing of her skinny arms, which I seem to have, and just
so that's pretty incredible.
The confusion that she had.
Yeah.
And so then I went and found some old photographs and then put it together that way.
All right. So that was instrumental in you choosing to do a show about family matters.
Well, it was one of those situations where I was struggling to pick out a subject matter for the show for years, because we're always so obsessed about what are we going to do that's hopefully original, strong, honest work. And I kept kind of racking my brains to figure that out. And ultimately I decided, I couldn't make a decision. I finally went kind of inward and thought, what is it that is happening in your life that's really right there? And my mom is turning 102 in June.
It's amazing.
Lying in bed, unable to talk or walk. And you'll see drawings I've done on site, on location of her, which are really difficult to see and to actually just see and to do.
Yeah.
My daughter, at the time I was trying to decide, was pregnant, and she just had a 1-year-old now. So it was really a very clear decision, even though it took me forever to kind of make it.
Right.
It was, what do you love? This is what's happening in front of you in your life.
Right.
And so choose a subject matter that you love. Mm-hmm. And then media that you love to paint or draw in.
I think it was interesting because you said that the media was important. The charcoal had a special meaning for you when you used it?
Well, I do a lot of media.
Right.
I teach partly because I love experimenting with different materials, but also pretty much because I just like the difference of one type of texture that, so the point being that each one of these medium is specific to a certain result that you want to get from the work. So you choose appropriately what you're going to use. So I use charcoal for something that's got texture, and like my grandmother's sweater, wrinkles, that sense of really dark chiaroscuro.
Right.
Whereas watercolor might be more fluid, graphite powder might be more fluid.
Well, let's just do some graphite images, because you have now this is your mother that is done in graphite. So do you feel?
So what's happening is in this show I did a series of Sophie drawings in charcoal, and then I found her pearl collars.
Okay.
And
that she had made?
That she had crocheted.
Okay.
And so I mounted them on the top and the bottom around a watercolor sepia painting of her when she was a young woman. So, because part of the show I realized was this concept of the kind of continuity of ages, the different generations, that you'd have my grandmother as an older woman about to die, and than what she created, and then what it was, what she looked like when she was younger. And so the same thing applied to my mom. I knew I was going to, I drew my mom recently, and then in the wedding day drawing, which was smooth and graphite, I had discovered a 70-year-old photo album in my mom's house, and found these two really wonderful vintage, antique sepia photographs of my mom and my dad on their wedding day. So that seemed like a great idea to reproduce and to do in graphite, because it was on cream papers in order to simulate the vintage.
Oh, I see.
The vintage photograph.
Right. But they're not sepia; they're graphite black.
They're graphite powder and line. So you put in, it's a tonal drawing where you're putting in the tone of the graphite powder, and then you're drawing with a line, and then
but you're not erasing.
And then you're erasing out the lights.
Oh, okay.
But you're staying away from the lights initially. You don't.
You try to put in all the dark shapes, and
right.
then you pull out the lights from
right,
it.
exactly.
Yeah,
and so I did that to my mom and my dad.
Okay.
Initially, I was going to do my dad similar to the Seurat at the museum in Conti, but it was too black. That it didn't work. And in that case, it was a perfect,
Yeah, I think that you tend to be very detailed in what you're doing. And
detailed on top.
But Seurat is really just shapes when you look at it if you stand back. Right. So.
I mean, the point was to sort of be tonal and less detailed initially, and then so only do some detail where you want focus.
Okay.
So the whole drawing, both my mom and my dad were done kind of tonally, and then just a little bit of clarity in the features
face,
where you want
us
to look.
Right. So, and then you moved on from that, and then you went into watercolor.
Well, so there are some drawings. There's a drawing of me, a self-portrait of me in graphite.
Yeah, right. And you use this one for teaching.
And I was using it for teaching, and that's why the background's all wrinkled, although it kind of is interesting in comparison to the smoothness, and my eyes are a little wide, to say the least, but that's what happens when you focus on a self-portrait.
Yeah. That's okay. It's your self-portrait. You can make it any way you want to. That's what's the nice part about it. And posterity in 100 years, when they go, look, that's what she is.
My husband always says, "What do you look? Well, you look much better than you're showing." And usually, I try to make my face very narrow.
Yeah.
Because I always think it's too wide. So you're always doing the opposite. You have complete control. You might as well.
It's like one time I did a portrait, and the woman said, "Could you change the shape of my eyes? Could you change my nose? Could you change my chin?" And then she said, "That doesn't look like me." So. I do portraits on commission. You do portraits, I know, so you know that.
Teenage parents asking me to cut off the hair of their teenage children because they've just been thrown out of school and for doing some very bad things.
Okay, so I don't want to skip over the self-portrait, because there's one there of you with silver point.
Okay, so
and I'd love to discuss silver point and talk about that.
Okay, all right.
That's a fabulous medium that I have never used.
You've never used it?
No.
Really? Okay.
So what is it?
All right. So around, I think it's 15.
Oh, that's okay. We don't have to have the exact date.
1484.
Okay.
13-year-old Dürer was
Albrecht
Dürer was the son of a jeweler, and his father worked in metal point or silver point.
Okay.
In order to prepare jewelry plates, copper plates, and also all engravings. So he taught his son how to use this medium, and he did a self-portrait at 13. And the drawing of my daughter, actually, Samantha focused, is similar in style, both in style technically to silver point, but also in the focus of, now with he had a straying eye, so that's similar in the way.
So he was your inspiration for
that was the inspiration
for Sam?
For that position of Sam, for that particular pose.
Okay.
Essentially, silver point is a metal, sterling silver, put in our case, it's put in a mechanical pencil holder.
Okay.
And
so it's like a point. It's like a lead.
It's a piece of sterling silver wire.
Oh, okay.
Or you can use you can use a butter knife or old earrings to get a mass, a larger tone. Okay. So in my self-portrait for the dress, the rolled ruffle.
Right.
I took a butter knife, and that's why I'm holding it in my hand actually at the bottom.
Oh, cool.
And on its side, you can draw with it on its side, and then the line work is done with the mechanical pencil.
Yeah, but you're
with
not
a
doing it on
silver-
just plain paper.
So right. So silver point will not work on regular paper. It'll only work on a prepared paper, which means in the old days that meant hide glue and some kind of white chalk. But now
that sounds almost like preparation for an oil painting, is it?
it's a little bit like that.
okay.
Yeah. So but now they and in the old days you couldn't really erase, and so eventually it became an obsolete medium because people discovered that graphite could be erased. And the graphite mines were found in England in the 1500s, so they stopped using silver point for a while. But we're talking about people like Rembrandt, who used it, and Da Vinci, Dura, who used it, probably Raphael, and Michelangelo for preparatory drawings on a wall.
Interesting.
So the chalk base of a wall
Of a fresco.
Would take silver point as well as charcoal or a type of black chalk. In any case, these days you prepare a surface, and in the drawing.
So the surface would be paper. Would be a watercolor paper?
You can use paper. You could use hot press watercolor paper. You can use board, acid-free board. You're preparing both sides with either Liquitex casein. In the old days, Dinnerstein would use that. But now Golden, the company, puts out a silver point ground in a bottle that is usable and erasable.
Wow.
So you can draw with a butter knife or draw with any silver material. The point also is that you could draw with copper, which will eventually turn green. Silver tarnishes and turns brown.
Wow.
So all of the drawings of my grandmother from 1980, the silver point drawings, or from my daughter when she was a baby with her dad.
Oh yeah, we have a picture of your husband.
Those are silver point drawings as well as my own.
So the one with your husband and with holding your daughter.
Now that's brownish because it's from 1980. My kids, I have twins and they're 33 and they were born right after 9 months after my grandma.
Oh, wow.
That drawing has tarnished, and you can see the difference.
Even though it's under glass.
Under glass, because it's oxidized, and so it's you can see the difference between that coloration, that tarnishing, versus the one of my self-portrait, which is gray and newly done, and so is my daughter. The Dura inspired one of my daughter.
The gray.
So those are grayer because they're newly done.
So does it get darker also as it gets?
Not really.
No, it just changes
You never really
color.
get it black. You only get
And how
tones of
do
gray.
you erase? Do you just put the ground over
An
it?
ink eraser.
An ink eraser. Yeah.
And actually, a regular pink pearl eraser will erase.
Right.
Now, specifically with this kind of ground. In the old days, in 1980, I was studying with Harvey Dinnerstein, and in his class, we used Liquitex casein, which wasn't erasable, so you had to mix a little bit of the background white casein, and it was a little bit like in typing, whiteout.
Right,
it was like
so
whiteout.
you put that,
and then you would
right.
go back and redraw there.
Yeah. You also have one image that is just a little, we'll go off base a little bit, because I know when you used to do these, well, I don't want to call it garbage, but maybe what would you call it?
Okay, so again, part of the problem with choosing this particular subject matter for this show was that I was doing, I've just since finished a whole series of environmental pieces, and they were essentially about the concept that we need to pay attention to the environment and what we're doing to the environment. In that case, it was a drawing done in silver point with added objects. The objects came from walking on the beach in Florida. It was a skull. I'm not quite sure it's a bird skull or a fish skull, and I found it next to this fishing line, nylon fishing line. So immediately, of course, packed it up and took it home, and then started drawing the skull from different perspectives, looking down at all different perspectives. In a sense, trying to sort of bring back to life the spirit of this dead creature, and also to maybe have us think about what careless fishermen might be doing and what we are doing with how we just cast off our stuff.
Well, if we have time later, after we finish talking about the show, maybe we'll go into more of those. But let's go back, because you have another medium in the show, which was dry point.
Right. Okay, so the show is, again, full of different generations, contrasts of generations, as well as contrasts of media. The dry point is a linear technique, and I'll explain in a second. Just like silver point, when you're using the mechanical pencil point, is a linear technique, just like charcoal is linear as well, as opposed to the graphite or the watercolor.
Which is spreading on more
and
tonal.
fluid.
Right.
Okay, so essentially in this case, and again, I've kind of done a contemporary take on the dry point. It's a plexiglass plate, piece of plastic that is 5 by 7 inches. I do a drawing from either a photograph or life on the plate. Either I do a drawing separately and then I trace the drawing. And you can draw on the plate with permanent marker. And then you take a scribe, an etching tool, and you basically carve through the line. Now when you do that, you create a burr. So you've got 2 raised lines and then the groove. So you've got like 3 lines that are going to receive ink. And then I ink it, roll out the ink, which I use actually water-based ink, so it's easily cleanable. And then take some printmaking paper, wet it, and put it through the press.
Yeah, and I think we should say that you have an amazing studio.
I have a great studio.
You have a great
very
studio.
Blessed.
Yes, you are. And it has all of this. You have a kiln, you have a...
I have locations for different things that I need to do.
Yeah,
the model.
That's great. You have the model.
Your model stand.
My model stand, yeah, that
Very
I'm
nice.
not using
Still
anymore.
use it.
Yeah. Now just explain the difference between dry point and then you have the picture of the dog that's a monotype.
Okay.
So
Is
she wait a minute, let me just, is that part of the family?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a lover of Airedales.
Okay.
Grew up with them. My father used to show them, and so we always have one around, hopefully. So the monotype is tonal, as it can be linear, but the way it works is you still have a plexiglass plate. In this case, it's a square, larger 9 by 9 inch plate. I am rolling on the same kind of ink. In this case, it's brown.
So before you're drawing, you're rolling this on?
You're not drawing.
Oh, you're not drawing?
I mean, you're drawing with a brush. So the dry point is an etched material where you're carving away. You're not putting it in an acid bath. It's different than etching. Dry point is, there is no acid involved. You really just like Mary Cassatt's dry points you see, they're very simple. There's just a line, you ink the line, you print it. You clean off the plate before you print it, and then you print it. So that's kind of a groove. You only get about 3 or 4 pulls for that. That means prints. You only get maybe 5. Eventually the burr and the groove become lowered by the pressure of the press.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
But if you used a metal plate, would that be true too?
it would be, you'd have absolutely get more than what I'm getting. And if you attach, it's called, anyway, you can back the metal plate and that'll keep it to allow you to get even more prints out of it. So in the monotype, you're essentially you're coating the same piece of plastic with ink, and then you could print it once, and then you can coat it again, and then you take a brush, a fan brush, or any kind of Q-tip, and you're lifting out ink where you want. You're essentially drawing or painting out. So it's a kind of subtractive process. The other is more additive.
I get it, yeah.
You know, linear adding, this is like subtracting line as well as tone.
Right.
And you only get really 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 pulls. You can put it again through the press. I studied with Michael Mazer, who would take a monoprint plate and he would rework the plate over and over again until he would do 6 pulls, but he would do 1 pull, 1 print, and then he would take the plate back into his work area and he would repaint the plate. So now you had and then he would print it.
So he put more additions to it and more additions and more additions.
Right.
Yeah,
so it's always variations on the theme of the original matrix.
Right, interesting. So there are many things that you could do. I'm
It's
very impressed with all the things that you can do here. And how I know you, though, more is as a watercolorist, because you've been doing watercolor for many years.
Yeah.
So, and we have a bunch of images from the show.
I think I started late, so I'm making up for lost time by trying to do everything. Well, trying to not do everything, but trying. Essentially, I really enjoy first trying to figure out what medium I'm going to use, and then once I'm there, I love doing watercolor. I love doing silver point or dry point, and each one of those, I try to do many in a series per type. So in the watercolor, I studied, I think that was a natural for me initially. I just studied in 1975 with Huey Lee Smith, and he just sat me down in the room at the Art Students League where I actually teach now, where Will Barnett taught as well, in Studio 5. And I remember just trying to pull out this watercolor from a model, and it was kind of dreary, no color. And so since then, my color is much stronger.
Yeah, no, very strong. You have very strong color with your watercolors. Yeah, this ones that we have here, the one of Sam with the baby, that's very bright.
Right. So that's done on a plate finish Strathmore Bristol paper. So it's a non-absorbent surface. So you're mixing up a lot of pure paint, more pigment, and some water, and just taking a large mop-type brush. I use rounds.
So you're working wet.
Well, you're not wetting the paper first. You're working wet though, and you're
almost
dropping.
Like would you say, would it compare to acrylic or oil painting when you do it that way?
Oil painting when it's thin.
Okay.
When there's turpentine.
But you're not working dark first to light. You're working light to dark.
Working middle tone, and then the darks on top, and then lift out the light. So it's again a subtractive process.
Oh, really?
And I do it sometimes on top of a charcoal pencil drawing, because the charcoal will evaporate, kind of mix with the watercolor.
It'll mix with it. It won't go away. You'll have the little darkness.
Really? Not really. No. I don't shade. It's just very light line work.
Okay. All right.
In order to.
Are you teaching watercolor at the Students League? Oh, you are. You're teaching all of these things?
I try to show them various techniques. In workshops, I will be more specific it'll be a watercolor workshop. Right now, it's pretty much a clothed model. Lots of students from ages 12 through 80, different levels. It's a portfolio class as well as put together a portfolio, teach drawing for college, graduate school, job search. It's that component, and so I look at their work that's created either in the class or outside in order to have that happen and help them apply. But it's essentially lots of figure drawing from a clothed model in charcoal, graphite powder. So I essentially go from line to line and tone. So the line work would be charcoal, graphite. The line and tone would be graphite powder, sepia.
Right. So
so I go from line and tone, limited color.
Right, and then
black, white, and red.
No oil or acrylic.
I don't do oil or acrylic. We do watercolor and full color pastel.
Oh, full color pastel. What, oil pastel or soft pastel?
I mean, I have a certain technique with oil pastel, but I teach solid soft pastel, as in sort of the way I learned from Daniel Green, I'd say.
Right. And then there's one other part of the show which is totally different, and something you do in your studio is make paper, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
And initially, I started making paper in New York City when we lived in the city with old newspapers, and it was not archival. Then
what happens?
They turn brown and get like this rim of ugliness.
Oh, yeah.
You can make some really ugly handmade paper, by the way, but you try
what
not to do that.
No, what happens to the type on it though? Does it disintegrate?
It turns into kind of gray mush.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
The point is that you can always recycle the handmade paper, and so if it's really bad, you just mash it up again, put it in your blender, one of your 20 blenders that you've broken in the process of recycling all your pulp, and you start all over again, which is to say that I went from really poor source material or sources of the pulp to taking my watercolors that were not watercolors I loved, and putting them, shredding them in the shredder, putting them in the blender. Then you're not getting white watercolor paper, or you're not getting white paper, because you've got the watercolor. The pigment is mixing, so it's a little bit off-white. And I continue to do that. In this case,
so wait, you're mushing up this paper with water.
So you're ripping your watercolors.
So you're recycling, basically.
Or I love Carriage House Paper and Dieudonné, but I work with Shannon Brock at Carriage House Paper, and she sells cotton linters, which are all kind of dried pulp.
Okay.
And she also macerates pulp in a Hollander beater for many hours. And for some of the pieces in the show,
Like, for instance, which one would that be?
so some of the white Letter to Sophie, or the self-portrait watercolor on paper, the one with my watercolor added. Essentially, all of the white work came from very pure cotton, macerated pulp.
But it has a design on it. It's almost like a sculpture then? Are you working this?
So what I do is I have a large table with a open trough underneath it, which is going to receive the water, and I set up a handmade paper screen out of a frame, and I pour the lots of, let's say, 2 pounds of prepared pulp. It's now in a liquid state, and it's mixed with formation aid. That slows down the drying. You pour that on top of this screen. The water drains, and what you have then is cellulose fibers bind, and the paper then holds together with this frame around it. You take the frame or the decal off, and you slide it over to a separate table. I then take a piece of lace, antique lace, and put it on top of that, cover it with interfacing and plastic, and hook up a wet vacuum cleaner. This is to simulate a vacuum table.
Is this your own idea?
This is a. If you're a paper maker, paper makers use a very expensive vacuum table, but I jimmied up a system with a wet vac that sucks out it creates a vacuum between the plastic and the lace. It sucks down the lace, sucks out the water, so now you have an embossment of the lace
and
into
can you
the pulp.
you take the lace off?
So then when you finished with a half an hour or so of the wet vac, and you can still hear
the noise of the vacuum.
That is the worst. You have to use, it's a little bit like being at the airport, you see those guys with their headphones. I have those on. In any case, you're finished with that. You then have to, then I set up a drying box, which is weighted with screening and tri-ply cardboard, a fan. So fan puts air through the tri-ply cardboard, and in between are these individual sheets of pulp, and the lace is kept on there until 2 weeks of every day changing the cotton blotters that are in between the lace and the interfacing, and removing there are 3 by 4 foot pieces of 3/4 inch plywood. It's really tough on your back.
Yeah.
But
But the end result is beautiful. It's fabulous, and I wish we had more time because I feel like I've just been in class. It's been great. I have learned so much. This was so interesting. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. I hope I didn't talk on a little too long.
No, it was so fascinating. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you
for having me. Appreciate it.
And thank you for watching.